For this meeting of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee on the 27th of June 2023. Councillor Buchanan? No. I could see that we have present today Councillors Johnson Dempsey, Donnelly, Fulton. Councillor Gowland? No. Councillor Handybod? No, I don't see you present. Also present today are Councillors Kerr, Lockhart and McDougall. Councillor Convery is also in attendance today, and we also have a number of officers present. So with that, I'll pass you back to the Chair to commence today's business. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Elizabeth Ann. Okay, so I'll move on to item 1, declaration of interests. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interests?
I'm not seeing any hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So no declarations of interest. Moving on to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. And I would like to move the minutes as a correct record.
I'll second you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3, the Internal Audit Annual Assurance Report 2022-23. And can I ask Yvonne Douglas of Audit and Compliance to speak to this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. As you said, this is the Internal Audit Annual Assurance Report for 22-23, and the purpose of this is to report on the progress and performance of internal audit for that year, and to express an audit opinion for the financial year ended 31st of March 23. The report starts with setting out our compliance with the public sector internal audit standards. It confirms that we've undertaken a self-assessment exercise in the year to assess our compliance, and also notes that this is currently being externally assessed, with the expectation that a report will be issued by the end of this month. I have been given informal feedback that there are no significant issues that will be raised within that report. The report then in section 4 and 5 on page 12 moves on to talk about the workload and performance of the team during the year. And as a reminder, it references the audit plan that was presented to the committee in January 22 with an update in September 22. So in terms of progress with the plan at 5.1 on page 12, we're noting there that we delivered more than the targeted plan days in the year, 102%. And we're also noting that 94% of the audit plan was delivered by the end of April. There were 3 audit assignments that were outstanding, and they're detailed in 5.1. In terms of performance, 5.4, the report deals with that. It sets out the indicators that are routinely reported to the Audit Committee, and it notes that we exceeded 3 of the targets, and with 2 indicators falling marginally behind target. One was in relation to the delivery of the plan, which I've just mentioned, the 94%, and the other one was completing jobs within budget, which sat at 69%. Sat at 79% against our target of 80%, so very marginally below the target that we had set. 5.5 is noting that both the workload and performance is sufficient to support the audit opinion that's expressed within the report. So the audit opinion is the main part of this report, and the basis for that audit opinion is set out in section 6 of the report, which starts on page 13. And what it does is it takes you through the 3 areas of the audit opinion in relation to governance, risk management arrangements and internal control. And within each of those areas, it tells you what internal work has been completed in the year and what the assurance from each of those pieces of work. So starting with governance at 6.2, it talks about the work that we've undertaken in this area, and that's around reinforcing conflict of interest processes, reviewing the counter-fraud policy and undertaking a number of routine governance tasks which are set out at 6.5. The report then goes on to talk about delivery of internal audit actions, and obviously delivery of these actions is evidence of good governance. And at 6.7, we're noting that 100% of internal audit actions were delivered on time. The only caveat to that is we're recognising that there's still a fairly limited number of internal audit actions, and that's a reflection of a pausing in our work during COVID, and the actions are obviously the results of our work. So there's still a wee bit of a lag there in terms of returning to business as usual, but in terms of the actions, 100% 100% of them were delivered on time. And we're reflecting that also in terms of the recommendations and actions that came from our external auditors. We were noting there was 3 of those, and again, 100% of those were delivered on time. The report then goes on at 6.12 to look at risk management and the work that was completed in that area. So we did some work around 3 lines of defence methodology. And basically what that does, it takes your controls against your top risks and it puts it into 3 different categories. And an explanation of those categories are set out at 6.13. The report notes that that work is ongoing and will conclude in 23-24. Other areas in risk management are around cybersecurity, and the top half of page 15 sets out the work that we've done in relation to that. Sets out some key assurances there about that damage could be contained were an attack to happen, and that we do have sufficient backup systems in place to restore should such an event occur. We are noting, however, that despite these assurances, there would inevitably be a disruption to operations. There are some recommendations coming from this piece of work around reviewing the protocol and the retesting and the time periods between that, recommending that that happens on a more regular basis. Having a review of our emergency systems so we know in which order we would bring these back up, and also reflecting the fact that work is ongoing within business service continuity plans. The report then goes on to talk about sustainability, and this is essentially a position statement, so it's gathering information from different sources and presenting it to you in terms of a piece of assurance. And I think the kind of key message for the committee here is that there are key assurances around the fact that we have a clear assessment of the challenges that lie ahead. We have action plans in place, both short and medium term, but what the report tries to reflect are the challenges around this as well, and how that will need to be factored into decision-making processes as we go forward. The only other kind of main area within the risk management was around community wealth building. And again, a positive piece of work there around the risk register, having a look at the controls and the fact that we can see they've all been assigned to key officers, and we could also see evidence of control actions being progressed. The final part of the report deals with internal control, and you'll see the majority of this focuses on the implementation of Oracle Fusion, which is a cloud-based human resources and financial management system. A significant amount of our time has been involved in this project, and we've had a look at our business process readiness, our solution design, and also our programme management and governance as set out at 6.25. Our key focus in this is to look at key internal controls to make sure that off-system and manual workarounds are minimised, and we form part of the implementation team and sit on the PRB for this project. Aside from that key role, we've also helped providing core data, we've looked at process overviews, and we've also had some input to design solutions. So all of that recognises there's been a significant amount of internal audit resources that have been invested in Oracle Fusion during 22-23. The report then concludes with some more routine work around equity strategy, additional support needs, transport processes, and some work within social work looking at procedures for dispensing medication, and a brief update in relation to self-directed support. The only final areas in that are around the routine tasks of providing advice and guidance, data analysis, disseminating fraud alerts, and also helping to facilitate the NFI exercise. And all of these pieces of work take you to the audit opinion, which is set out on page 19 in section 7. There's some context to that audit opinion set out in paragraphs 7.1 to 7.3, and the audit opinion itself is expressed in 7.4. And that remains, as it has been in previous years, that reasonable assurance can be placed on the adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's framework of governance, risk management and control arrangements for the year ended 31st of March 2023. Attached to Appendix 2 is a formal audit certificate, as is required by the internal audit standards, which formally sets out that audit opinion. If I just take the committee back to the recommendations on page 11 at 2.1, I'm asking that you note internal audit's performance, that the overall findings from internal audit work be noted, and that it be approved that these will inform the Council's 22-23 governance statement, and lastly that the level of assurance that's stated within the report is noted. Thank you, Chair.
Yvonne. I'll just open up the floor to any questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Chair, Councillor Johnson Dempsey has his hand raised.
Councillor Johnson Dempsey.
Thank you for that report, Yvonne. Regarding points 6.25 through 6.37, pages 16 and 17, I note the ongoing involvement of internal audit in the oversight of the Oracle Fusion project, which is obviously very important. I see that at 6.37 a comment was recorded regarding ongoing challenges to resource this project from both internal audit and the council services with implementation responsibility. Are there deemed to be any high-level risks or even issues there, and what's the confidence level in mitigating these?
From an internal audit perspective, I was noting at 6.37 that we're constantly reassessing our resources to ensure that we effectively contribute to go live. I don't think we can ignore the magnitude of the project, and it's obviously going to require significant resources. I think it would be remiss of me not to reflect that when we have a relatively small team, to see that there are challenges there. We do continually need to look at our workload and prioritise, but the comfort that I can give the committee is that we continue to do that on a weekly basis to make best use of the resources that we have so that we can deliver a core programme of work, but also to contribute to what is a significant corporate task, and one that we have a real input in that can add value. So we are mindful of our kind of corporate responsibilities. We continue to do that, and we're continuing to manage that within the context of the plan. The 23-24 plan had quite a significant allowance for fusion, so we recognised that at the outset that we would need to put a lot of audit days into it, and that's what we're doing, and I'm just reflecting that within the report just so that there's that consistent message. But if I can give you any assurance today, it is that we are continuing to manage it, and we will continue to contribute through to implementation date.
Okay, you want to come back in, Carl? Are you happy with that? Okay, thank you. Mary?
Thank you, Chair. My question is 6.41 regarding the update and self-directed support. I see that there is mention of one of the two outstanding risks remaining open due to commitments around the new social work system. Can you provide more information on the remaining risk and what plans, timescales there are to address this? Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you. The remaining action is around the use of a client screen, and the teams require specific training on the use of that client screen. That needs to come from the training and development team within social work resources, and their focus at this point is on the implementation of the new social work system. We're currently discussing this with the client to agree on a reasonable implementation date. Once that's been concluded, it'll be reported to the audit committee so that we can come back. But part of that discussion is obviously trying to assess what's reasonable from a service perspective and what is reasonable from our perspective in terms of managing the risk about that screen not being in use. So we take all of those things into consideration. We agree a date, and if I had any concerns, I would bring it back to the committee once we had that agreement.
Thanks, Yvonne. Are you happy with that, Mary?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I should say Councillor Donnelly, really, shouldn't I? Sorry. I did have one question, if I can just ask my question as well, Yvonne. I did note again in your section 6 that due to the heightened risk and sophistication of cyber attacks in the current environment, a new business continuity plan, and you touched on it in your report, will be brought to the committee in 23-24, and also that currently plans are tested every 3 years. Can I just ask the last time the plans were tested, and if there was any kind of headline actions or results that might be of interest to the committee? For Yvonne, I think.
It was recently retested in 2022. There were some actions coming out of that, and I think that's what we're trying to reflect when we talk around the kind of heightened vulnerabilities, are specifically in relation to employees, training and legacy systems. So these were the main kind of learning points that came out of it, which I don't think was a surprise and probably confirmed what was already understood to be the case. The discussion we're having now is that given the pace of cybersecurity and the risks attached, is whether the retest every 3 years is something that needs to be considered, and that's discussions that we're having with IT, but also with wider business continuity teams as well, so that we get a whole council approach to that, to try and manage that risk as effectively as possible.
Thanks very much, Yvonne. That makes sense to me. Any other questions on this report?
I don't see any other hands raised, Chair.
Okay, in that case, I would like to ask the committee to approve the report, and I will move the report.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, that report is then approved. So moving on to item 4. So item 4, annual governance statement for 2022-23 and significance governance areas, Q4 progress report. I believe after this report that our Chief Executive and Deputy Council Leader can leave after this item if they wish. So I'm just mentioning that. And I'll hand over to Geraldine McCann, Head of Administration and Legal Services, to speak to this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report is very detailed, so you'll be glad to hear that I'm not going to go through it line by line. I know that you will have read it with your papers. I'm just going to highlight some of the main areas of it. This report gives you the annual governance statement for 22-23, which will be included in the annual accounts if you approve it. The annual governance statement is produced after a full assessment and evaluation of the Council's governance arrangement, and this is done based upon the SIPFA code and SOLACE guidance that was produced. The framework used within the Council for the evaluations you will see in the diagram in Appendix 1, and that's on page 31 of the report. The statement itself is in Appendix 2, and it's from pages 33 to 48, but there is a brief outline of what's included in that in Section 4 of the report, which, excuse me a second, which starts on page 26. The annual governance statement itself also reflects the internal audit assurance that you've already heard. That was in Yvonne's report, her previous report, and it also reflects the assessment of the Council's risk management service. So you'll see that's outlined in section 4.3 of the report, and it reflects that a reasonable assurance can be placed in the adequacy and effectiveness of the governance framework, and a good level of assurance can be placed on the strategic risk control environment, and a good level of assurance can be placed on the operational risk control environment. So that's all very positive. In section 4.4 of the report, we have picked out some significant governance areas which we will monitor throughout 23-24, and there are 11 of those. Now, you will see that some of them say that they've been carried forward from last year. Now, that's not that no work was done on these last year, because they were progressed. However, they are still relevant in this year, and we will continue to monitor them. And some of them are also related to action plans, which are straddle more than one financial year. So that's why there's a large number carried forward. The new ones you will see are relatively new, and one of these is the development of a local heat and energy efficiency strategy that came out through the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy, and also the new commissioning plan, which is to be developed by SLLC and presented to the Council. So these are flagged up as completely new. The other ones, they are will still be monitored. You will also see within the governance statement itself, it's very detailed because it's based upon the main principles of governance from the SIPFA code. That is supported, that links then to the council objectives from the council plan, and then there are whole tables of evidence on how we meet those principles within the council. So hopefully once you've had the opportunity, or you've had the opportunity to read those, you will see that there is actually a lot of evidence to support the assessment and the governance statement here today. Appendix 3 of this report also gives you an update, the Q4 update, on the significant governance areas that were flagged in last year's governance statement. And I'm glad to say that all of them were progressed, all the actions were progressed, but some of them continue forward into this year because of the nature of the action. So taking you back to the recommendations within the report, committee is asked to approve the annual governance statement and to note the significant governance areas progress identified at Appendix 3 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Geraldine, another hugely important body of work completed there. Thank you. Do we have any questions for Geraldine on that report?
Councillor Donnelly, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Donnelly, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Geraldine, Appendix 2.11, recruitment and retention challenges, specifically mentions issues around this in relation to social care amongst other employee groups. Is there an expectation that this will be eased in the light of the recent successful job evaluation outcome, which will result in improved pay for social care staff? Thank you.
I think we're very much in the lap of the gods with that one, but we would hope so. Certainly, there's been a lot of work done over the past year, and workforce plans were refreshed to just update what resources needed to do to attract recruitment. There was very much a focus on a grow your own, so the modern apprentice scheme and developing workers from within the service already to undertake new tasks. They certainly used a lot more of social media and job fairs to try and attract workers, and they're certainly also using the employability routes to attract people within the skill shortage areas, and social care is very much one of those. Hopefully when I come back with Q2, I'll be able to give you a more definitive answer to that one.
Thank you, Geraldine. I'm aware that this is short time scale, but yeah, I look forward to that report coming forward and your innovative plans to improve the recruitment. Sounds good.
Thanks, Councillor Donnelly. Thanks, Geraldine. Okay, any other requests to speak on this topic?
Don't see any further questions, Chair.
Okay, in that case, I'll ask the committee to note the recommendations to approve the statement and note the significant risks.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Donnelly. Okay, so our Chief Exec and Deputy Council Leader can leave now if they so wish. And we'll move on to item 5, the unaudited annual accounts for 2022-23.
Sorry, Chair. I think the Chief Executive had wanted...
He wanted to speak, didn't he?
The Chief Executive was just thanking the committee, but they are now leaving. Thanks.
Thank you. Smashing. Okay. Obviously, because I'm not in the room, I can't see what's happening. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so just to reiterate, we'll move on to item 5, our unaudited annual accounts for 2022-23, and I'll ask Jackie, Head of Finance Strategy, to speak to that, please. Jackie Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, everybody. This paper is to allow us to consider the unaudited annual accounts for the Council and also our related charitable trusts. So through regulation, we're required that our unaudited accounts are submitted to our external auditor no later than the end of June, and elected members are required to consider the unaudited accounts no later than the 31st of August. The Council's terms of reference deem that this committee will formally consider the unaudited accounts prior to submitting them to Audit Scotland for audit and making them available for public inspection. So at section 4, we're covering the unaudited accounts for the Council firstly. They're attached at Appendix 1 to the paper for your information, and they do, as you would expect, include a number of financial statements, including balance sheets and income and expenditure accounts, as well as information on reserves, cash flow and supplementary notes. It also includes the annual statement of governance, which you have approved earlier in this committee. We will make our unaudited accounts available for public inspection between the end of June and the 21st of July. Again, that's a requirement under regulation for us to do that. And following the audit, which will take place over the summer months, we'll bring back the audited accounts to this committee for approval. At the moment, the planned date for that to come back to you is the 26th of September. We will be issuing a copy of the unaudited accounts to all elected members as we send them on to our external auditor at the end of June. At section 4.6, we refer to a requirement that we have to restate our monitoring figures that we report to committee. So this is a requirement of the accounting code, and effectively it asks us to reconcile what we report to committee as a monitoring position to the figures that are included in the accounts, which are presented on an accounting basis. And that statement is included at Appendix 2 of the report for your information as well. At section 5, we cover the financial position in terms of the home carers job evaluation. And we're reporting here that as of the 12th of June, the position in relation to back pay on the job evaluation was known, and a position was established for backdating payments to October 2020. The value of that will take some time to calculate, but we are required to account for those costs in the financial year 22-23, which these accounts relate to. As the outcome of the review was only known as this report and the accounts were being finalised, it hasn't been possible to update the figures to reflect the outcome highlighted above, but a contingent liability has been included within the accounts, and the position will be updated for the audited accounts version that we'll bring back in September. We also cover at section 6 the group accounts. Again, as this report was being finalised, the group accounts were still to be completed. We've now issued a final version including the full group accounts to all members of this committee. And at section 7, we cover our charitable trusts. This committee is also required to consider the accounts for the charitable trusts that the council has an interest in. So that's the Education Trust, our Charitable Trust and the East Kilbride Information Technology Trust. And again, those accounts were attached to the papers at Appendix 3. Again, these will be emailed to all elected members following submission to audit at the end of June. And again, they'll be brought back for approval and signature in the autumn following our audit. So in terms of recommendations, we're asking that the annual accounts for the council and the related charitable trusts be submitted to Audit Scotland by the deadline of the 30th of June. Thanks, Chair.
Many thanks, Jackie. Another huge piece of work achieved by you and your team. Thank you. Do we have any questions for Jackie on the unaudited accounts?
Councillor Johnson-Dempsey, Chair.
Councillor Johnson-Dempsey.
Thank you for that report, Jackie. Regarding section 5 on page 70 about the home care job evaluation, I do appreciate that the effective date and value of the back pay is still to be determined, but can you advise the committee of the value of the contingent liability that's been set aside for this?
Hi there. The contingent liability is actually a reference that we make in the accounts to something that we can't yet put either a figure on or know the outcome of a decision. So at the time these accounts were being prepared, the contingent liability merely states that the outcome is awaited. So there's no figure attributed to that yet. At the moment, what we're doing is working through what the costs of that back pay will be. You'll appreciate that the cost will depend on people that have left the council, the time period that people have worked that still are employed by the council, and also things like, are they members of a pension scheme or have they worked overtime? So we don't have a figure yet for what that backdate pay will cost yet. When we have that, we have to weave them into the accounts. A commitment has been made to take back to the Executive Committee in August a report that shows the cost of that and how it will be covered in terms of funding.
Okay for you, Cal?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions?
I don't see any further requests to speak, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth Ann. Okay, in that case, I'll ask for the report to be noted, and I will move that,
And I'll second that, Chair.
asking the committee to agree to note. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much. Moving on to item 6, which is more of our general update activities. So item 6, our internal audit activity as at the 17th of February 2023. And again, I'll ask Yvonne Douglas to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is just the routine internal audit activity. At this time of year, we have a bit of a crossover, so there's replication really what's in this report with what's in the annual report. So you'll see a lot of things that we've already gone through for the purposes of the annual report. So in terms of the progress at section 4, it's given you the 94% that I've just referred to for the annual report in terms of completion of the audit plan. Preparatory work has started on the next year's plan, but it's too early to be able to monitor significant progress at this stage. Again, for completeness, for Appendix 1, we've reported our normal performance indicators, but again, these are the same indicators that have been captured within the annual report. Appendix 2 covers the work that was finalised in the period 6th of May to 9th of June. And at Appendix 3, what we've done is given more detail around the sustainability. So again, that's captured within the annual report, but in the activity report here, we've shared some more information in the position statement, as would be our normal practice. Section 5 of the report, an update in relation to public sector internal audit standards. Again, just a reiteration of what I've said, that the assessment has been concluded, that we're expecting a report at the end of this calendar month, and the informal feedback has been that there are no significant issues that will be reported to the committee at the next meeting. So in terms of this report, I'm just asking that progress is noted. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any questions for Yvonne on that report?
I'm not seeing any hands, Chair.
Okay, in that case, I'll ask the committee to note the report, and I will move that.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Donnelly. Okay, so we shall move on to item 7, which is our 2022 National Fraud Initiative exercise. Again, that goes back to Yvonne for an update on that exercise, please. Yvonne?
Thank you, Chair. This is the first of 3 reports on the 2022 NFI exercise that the committee will receive. So in the background, it just as a reminder as to what the NFI is. It's a data matching exercise that takes data from across the public sector. It matches that data and it returns them to councils where they have a match for them to investigate further with the intention of identifying potential areas of fraud. This is at the start of the exercise, so this is really just setting out a plan as to what we intend to do in 23-24. So in Appendix 1, we've listed all the areas that the data is matched. In Appendix 2, we've summarised the results that have come back to us in terms of the number of matches. So you'll see that when we compare it to the last exercise, we're broadly the same, although for individual lines there are movements up and down. At the early stages of the exercise, it's difficult to identify the reason for these movements, but that's part of the exercise as we move through 23-24 to try and assess where we're getting more matches and whether that's a result of more instances of potential fraud, or whether there are changes to our procedures or a review of our controls. So all of these things are taken into consideration as we move through. As you'll see, in terms of the total number of matches, we're talking about over 26,000. It is not feasible for us as a council to investigate those matches, nor is it a sensible use of our resources, because a large number of those matches will actually prove not to be fraud, but to be just a match, but not give any concern. So what we do is we risk assess those to try and pull out the more significant ones, the areas where we think there are potential fraud, and that's what you can see in Appendix 3. So what it does is it takes that 26,000 and going through a number of various risk processes, we reduce that to just over 3,000. And it's an intention that's the number that we'll investigate in 23-24. We go out to services, we discuss it with them, we agree an approach with them, and we would also discuss this with our external auditor to make sure that they're comfortable with our approach as well. So the purpose of this paper is just to bring this to you so that you can note the results of the matching exercise, the target number of investigations that we intend to complete, and also note that further reports in terms of outcomes and also what South Lanarkshire Council's outcomes look like compared to the wider Scotland exercise will be the subject of 2 further reports to the committee during 23-24. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks again, Yvonne. Do we have any questions on the National Fraud Exercise report?
I don't see any hands, Chair.
Okay, in which case can I ask a quick question? Just regarding the initial number of matches. I'm not sure which body it is that does the kind of broad matching, so maybe if you could explain who that is. There were 26,000 matches from the initial process, which you have risk assessed down to 3,000. I was just to ask if there is any kind of feedback loop into that body that can perhaps allow them to improve the initial matching, because as you say, 26,000 is just not a feasible number.
The exercise is owned by the Cabinet Office within Scotland. It's Audit Scotland, the facility, the exercise. To get it down from the 26,000 to 3,000 is actually with the help of Audit Scotland. So they give us a number of risk factors to use. So it's recognised that pulling this volume of data from this number of public bodies will result in a high number of matches, some of those spurious, and it is actually Audit Scotland that help us to bring that down to a more manageable number in terms of the risk assessment. I think the nature of the process makes it almost impossible to reduce the total number of matches that we would get. What is really helpful are those risk indicators that Audit Scotland set out that allow us to get to a more manageable number to investigate. So I think participating in this exercise will always see numbers like that kind of, in fact, possibly more as more public bodies are brought into the remit of the exercise. I think the important thing is how we manage that down to a number in which we can investigate, and then how we can justify those investigation numbers in terms of outcomes. So what we would look to still produce from looking at over 3,000 matches is that there's relatively few outcomes coming from it. And I think that's been the pattern of recent exercises, and what I would anticipate we would see again this time around, that even although we're looking at 3,000 matches, there's relatively few of those that will result in specific action having to be taken in terms of recovery. We'll need to see how that plays out, but that's certainly been the pattern in previous exercises.
Okay, thanks very much, Yvonne. That's a reasonable explanation, I think. Obviously, there's a lot of time must go into investigating even 3,000. Yeah. Okay, so if there's no other questions, can I ask the committee to agree to note the report, and I will move that.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to item 8, which is our Audit Scotland report, Resourcing the Benefit Service, a thematic study. And Fraser Morrison will speak to this. Fraser, please.
Thank you, Chair. This paper provides a summary of the Audit Scotland thematic study looking at the resourcing of council benefit services. Section 3 covers the background to the report, highlighting that although benefits processing remains a core function of the benefit service, most council has expanded the remit of the service to carry out other assessment and processing activities. It also highlights that South Lanarkshire Council was one of 28 councils to participate in this study out of 32 councils in Scotland. Section 4 covers the main body of the Audit Scotland report, with 4.2 highlighting the key message from Audit Scotland that it's vital that councils have sufficient resources within the benefit service to process benefit claims as quickly as possible. This is due to the fact that customers are often in urgent need of financial support, and avoidable delays can seriously impact their ability to support their household and sustain their tenancy. The report then goes on to analyse resourcing under 5 headings, these being workloads, resources, caseloads, call handling and personal callers, and speed of processing. I won't go through all 5 areas, but would maybe draw your attention to a couple of important points. Firstly, section 4.3 in relation to workloads. This section highlights that in the year 2022-23, almost all Scottish councils, that's 27 of the 28 who participated in the study, carried out other assessment and processing activities in addition to benefit claims processing, ranging from 1 additional activity to 10. South Lanarkshire Council carried out 9 additional activities, most of which are now embedded within the benefits service. Some of these activities specifically were in relation to the COVID pandemic and the cost of living crisis, where the benefits service had a critical role in getting financial support out as quickly as possible to those in need. Since the report, our benefit service is also currently administering the National Energy Support Schemes to provide financial support to households who did not receive it directly from their energy provider and households who use alternative fuels. I should say that the amount of time taken to perform these additional activities were not part of the study. The other area I would draw your attention to is section 4.7, which is in relation to speed of processing. This highlights housing benefit processing performance as measured and reported by the Department for Work and Pensions. This highlights that even with the breadth of additional activities undertaken, this council has maintained strong processing performance and compares favourably with all other councils, ranking second for new claims and first for change events processing. Finally, I'd highlight section 4.8, which lists 4 recommendations that Audit Scotland have made and our assessment of the position in South Lanarkshire Council in relation to each of them. Our assessment is that each of the recommendations are effectively addressed in the Council, and their strong performance and speed of processing is testament to this, even with the additional demands made on the service. That covers the main content of the report, so if I can take you back to the recommendation at the start of the report, that committee notes the key messages and recommendations. Thank you.
Fraser. Does anyone have any questions for Fraser on that report?
I think Councillor Donnelly would like to ask a question, Chair.
Councillor Donnelly.
Sorry, Chair. It's an observation. I think it would be, I'd like to say thanks to, that this committee should pass on thanks to the department in respect to the benefits and how they expedited them very quickly to very people who were vulnerable and in need. My hat goes off to the department and the robust way they did that, and I can't thank them enough, and I'm sure this committee would share that thanks with me. Thank you.
I'm sure, as you say, the committee would echo that sentiment. And I was just going to note that the South Lanarkshire Council performance seems to be very strong against the wider Audit Scotland recommendations and performing well. So thank you very much. And that leaves us with item 9, which I'll pass over to Elizabeth Ann McGonigal to speak on the forward programme for future meetings. Oh, hang on, I've not actually, just take that back a little second. I haven't actually asked the committee to note and second the report, so I move to note the report.
I'll second that report. I keep pressing.
Luckily we have Elizabeth Ann to keep us right. So, okay, thank you very much, Fraser. So that's the report noted and seconded. And this time, moving on to item 9, our forward programme for future meetings, to Elizabeth Ann. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Chair. This is a standard report that comes to each meeting of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee. The background is set out at section 3 of the report. The purpose is to advise members of the forward programme for the meetings of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee, and this report details that forward programme up to the 11th of June 2024, and that's detailed at the appendix of the report. Members are also invited to suggest topics for inclusion in the committee's forward programme. The report is just for noting, and the recommendation is set out at 2.1, that the report and outline forward programme for the meetings of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee to the 11th of June 2024 be noted. Thanks, Chair.
Ann, does anyone have any questions or comments on that?
I'm not seeing any hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I think we'll move to agree to note that report.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. And for item 10, there is no known urgent business. I just wanted to mention one thing. This is a kind of end. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'll do it anyway. This is the end of a cycle for me and some of the other new councillors of a year on the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee. So just wanted to extend my thanks to all the work that's gone into it and all the work the officers have done. I've learned a lot, and I'll probably maybe get Elizabeth Ann to send out an email to ask if people would be interested in a sort of, if we are going to come back to the same committee next year, if people are interested in doing some refresher training next year, now that we've seen how the committee works in action and it's not a theoretical thing for us. But again, just to thank everyone for the tremendous amount of work that's been put in, and end the meeting there. Thank you very much.